Okay, let's touch on the subject of handwriting just for a minute. You're in a system in which you're going to have to write your answers in an exam in timed conditions. How you write in that exam is a factor. Now, you will have an external examiner who will be reading your work amongst hundreds of others. They will try to read your handwriting, but if they find at some point it is illegible to them, human nature suggests that they will pass by that. They will try and read it once, maybe twice, but if they can't read it any further, they will go on. So it's incumbent upon you, incumbent is a word, it means you have to be responsible for the quality of your handwriting. Now, at the risk of sounding a little Victorian here, I see people's handwriting in class, and there's a few tips that I think could help to improve your handwriting. Now, that's not to say you're going to have to be a perfect handwriter in an exam. You're in time conditions, but I suggest that you use the hand that you're not writing with to hold the paper. And if you are slouched back in your chair, leaning back, it's likely that your writing will be sloppy. So think about sitting up straight and writing, holding the paper with your other hand. Right, now you have to write, I think in an hour, at least 3 sides of A4. Now, because the paper in the exam booklets are not actually A4 size, they're slightly shorter, you should be aiming for about 4 sides in an hour. So why Usain Bolt? Well, Usain Bolt did the 100 meters in 9.86 seconds. He didn't do that instantly. He had to practice to get up to that, until such time that he could do it in 42 strides. Now, you don't do that straight away without practicing, so you're going to have to practice your handwriting at speed, and try to improve the speed and the quality of your handwriting. This takes practice. Just as an aside, give yourself a little challenge here. Can you count to 42 seconds in 9.86 seconds? That's something to think about. Okay, let's look at essay questions. These are some questions from A2 coursework from previous years, but they're similar to questions that you might get in the written exam in the summer. Now, what you have to do is look for keywords in the questions and make sure that your essay is answering these keywords. So let's look at question number 5 and try and sort of make sure that we can work out the keywords in the question. Now, sometimes at AS and at A2, they will give you a quote which is in bold here, and you have to engage with that quote to get the highest marks. So let's consider what are the key words that we should be looking at. Well, first of all, Gothic protagonist. You'll need to address and show that you know what a Gothic protagonist is. Designed is a word that is encouraging you to look at the writer's presentation and the writer's techniques, and then both looking at Gothic protagonists as physically and morally repulsive. You know, are they ugly? Are they physically ugly? Are they morally ugly? So you'll have to, in your essay, deal with each of those key questions. Now, the second part of the question is giving us to what extent does this statement apply to your chosen text. Now, to what extent is a favourite phrase of examiners, and it means to what extent do you agree, and equally to what extent do you disagree, and do you disagree more than you agree. And that gives you a kind of structure for answering the question yourself. Equally, sometimes you might get a compare and contrast question, but this will be more for coursework. And again, looking for comparisons, similarities, but also differences and explaining those differences. literature questions at AS and at A2 in the exam tend to fall back to these kind of phrases. Again, I've talked about to what extent, how far do you agree with this statement, how far do you disagree, and then you work towards a conclusion. And in the same way, these phrases are asking the same thing of candidates. Explore the view. How far do you agree? How far do you disagree? Discuss the view. How far do you agree? How far do you disagree? So it's the same kind of questions inviting the same kind of structure. So let's look a little bit at structure. Okay, the structure of an exam question. You will have a brief introduction, which kind of chews over and sort of rewrites the question and engages with what the question is asking of you. Now, in our last slide, we talked about how far do you agree, how far do you disagree. My advice is to always start with the side you agree with the least, your least strong argument, and explore that perhaps in 2 to 3 paragraphs. Again, looking at the writer's techniques as part of that. Then move on to your main argument, the argument for which you might have more to say. Okay, and you might be looking at 3 to 5 paragraphs for that. Okay, and then you come back to a conclusion, which comes back to answer the question in some way, which touches on, in a new way, the arguments explored and comes to some new conclusions about the writer and their intentions and answers the exam question.